Hey, we're live. I'm Dr. Joe Lamb, and this is Dr. Michael Stone.
And I am alive. That's
Yeah.
a good Monday.
It's a good any day.
That's right.
So it's our Monday afternoon coffee break and couple housekeeping pieces. The Joseph Lamb MD website has been updated and has details about all the fun stuff we've got planned at the PLMC in Gig Harbor. And it's got a little mention of an upcoming event that we're going to do on Facebook Live on Saturday, the 24th, where Michael and I and our co-teachers are going to talk about what we're doing at Harmony Hill and Feathered Pipe. Also look out if you've been following Feathered Pipe and the fun stuff they've been doing. They've got their Dandelion Effect podcast, and I'm going to be on there this coming weekend, so you can hear more about our work and what brought me to this work. We're really happy that you're here with us today. What's new in your office, Michael? Anything exciting going on?
I would say that Megan Murphy-Rouse, she is doing a great virtual Go to Green, how you basically improve your health. And there's a cohort of about 18 teachers from the school district, and they're meeting every other week, and just phenomenal results, identifying their purpose, what is really important to them, and then using food and basically all the lifestyle components to improve health. And everybody has their own journey, everybody has their own purpose, and everybody has their own roadblocks or their own path to success. And so sometimes it just takes some time to identify that in group, have a little bit of encouragement, use a few simple tools, and Shazam, things change.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of the whole group experience. And, as more of us get vaccinated, both you and I have been vaccinated, and our team of co-teachers have all been vaccinated. As we move towards our dates at Harmony Hill and then later at Feathered Pipe, we're hoping that we can get people together for, still practicing safe distancing and the such, but feel more comfortable with our travel and the experience, and really, see what kind of magic takes place in terms of making some lifestyle changes that we want to make, learning something about ourselves.
No, that's exactly true. And especially in this pandemic era, with everything that's going on, recognizing that indeed identifying purpose and aspects of your journey and understanding aspects of your immunity and your inner balance really helps with function. So how do you bring about that rejuvenation in many different aspects of your life? We've all seen where somebody has all the healthy indicators, and their journey has been wrought with frustration or bad luck, and then we've seen the opposite. And so what are the things we can do? What are the perspectives we can bring to really help move us to that better place of well-being?
Yeah. And that you just kind of in there was something that made me think of what you and I had talked about this morning, which was that there was a report you said you had read that, interestingly enough, people with persistent post-infectious COVID symptoms, what we kind of call long-haul COVID, may be getting a symptomatic improvement after vaccination.
Well, it's preliminary reports. So how might that be possible? Well, it kind of takes us back to three possible components. One, can you be over this RNA COVID virus, quote unquote, symptomatically, yet intracellularly you still have COVID-19 is slowly smoldering, slowly activating your immune system, slowly causing the physiologic disruption that is associated with many of the post-COVID sequelae. And that is that's one theory why giving the mRNA vaccine and stimulating your immune system to see it more clearly helps your immune system be activated and clear the intracellular or the smoldering virus load. Much, and that's not new concepts, is it? I mean, we know Epstein-Barr virus has some of this smoldering component. Many of the RNA viruses can, and this is just another situation where that may be some of the explanation of why we're beginning to see this result. Think about it. We so much of the progress is to take observations from really astute observers and then pursue them with scientific rigor. And if we haven't seen that applied again and again and again in the last year and a half, then we've been blind to how science works. Observation, scientific method. So this is another astute observation, since the guidelines are, if you've had COVID, that after an X period of time, and that varies depending on who you talk to, but even as far away as 90 days, you should consider getting a vaccination. And seeing the results in folks that have some post-acute sequelae makes you ask the question, why might this be happening?
Yeah, and it raises I think that's like one of the three big kind of new things. One of the three big new things I think about COVID in the last couple weeks since we talked. The other one that I found really interesting is some of the data coming out of Israel, where they've demonstrated reduced transmission. So, whereas before we've said that the vaccine reduces symptomatic disease, but, wearing masks is, important to block transmission if you're an asymptomatic carrier. Data coming out of Israel, which may be part of what the CDC was looking at when they changed their policies last week, suggests that there aren't more asymptomatic cases. There's fewer cases in general. So you may not be able to transmit as well, even if you do get it once, or you've been exposed once you've had the vaccine. So that's very much a positive.
It certainly is. Absolutely. I also think we were chatting about a little bit of, because the immediacy of so much information, whether on our smartphone, the internet, or blasts on tweet or Instagram, it seems like a lot of this pandemic, it was policy or science reveal via news release or Instagram. And
right.
That seems, it is different than how we had it before, where
right.
you had peer-reviewed, a long process of peer review, and then you had it coming forward, and then you had the slow acceptance, and now we're almost getting the highlights before we can actually look at the data, and it causes some inner angst in me, actually. What about you?
Well, it does because, yesterday, if you would have asked me, I would have said I have some concerns about a potential for another surge based upon the fact that, 13 to 15 states on their 7-day running averages were up, right?
Yeah.
And ask me today, and that number's up to 25 or 27 states now are showing up in the pink on the COVID map from Johns Hopkins. And and that's just an aside. As someone who's a little red-green colorblind, that the shades of pink and green for good or bad, it's not a particularly easy way to deal with the data.
No, and for 5 to 10% of males that have some component of color blindness, it's a deal. Maybe that's why we have such sometimes misinformation in male politicians. Oh, that's an aside. Just they can't read the graphs, baby. They can't read the data.
Right. Yeah, I'm only partially red-green colorblind. Like when you get the dots that you have to look at,
yeah,
I can read some of them, but I can't read others. So it's kind of the mauves and the oranges and some of the pale greens, the turquoises are where I lose it and can't see that there's a pattern there.
Well, we'll make sure none of the graphs that we present ever have that challenge.
Well, that's why I've always used blue and yellow and white.
That's right.
I'm more sensitive to that fact. Sensitive to the fact that I can get to the front of the room and look and be like, I don't know what's on that slide anymore.
That's right. There you go.
But I mean, I think that's really a valid point. As you said, we've talked about uncertainty a lot. We've talked about sources of information a lot. I was just having a conversation with a friend, and we were discussing the changing world we're living in. And, people view geography even differently now than we did a few years back. Before I moved to Nashville, I really didn't have much concerns about moving to a populous metropolitan southern city in terms of, cultural issues. Mm-hmm. And if faced with that same decision today, I don't know what decision I would absolutely make. I'd probably make the decision not to go because of the deeper divide that has happened in that my ideas don't necessarily coincide with the way people want to act or be down there.
Well, that is an interesting self-reflective statement, right? On one hand, you have a Shakespearean, the world's a stage. And the other hand is actually, I don't know if I'd feel comfortable being on part of that stage.
Right.
It is an interesting kind of that's something we may that may be a good thing to walk around and say, okay, how comfortable or uncomfortable do I feel in a place where, for whatever reason, I can't relax as much. And if I can't relax as much, how can I think well? I wonder if that plays any role,
Yeah. Well, do you remember the Dick Van Dyke Show?
Yeah.
So, Rob,
okay, I'll just say that totally ages us. Except I'm sure you can get it on the internet somewhere, but okay, I digress.
Yeah, I'm hoping that it's on like Hulu and things like that, so other people have watched it. But there was an episode where they were telling the story of the day that Rob and Laura got married, and they told the story 3 times, from Rob's perspective, from Rosemary's perspective, and Laura's perspective. And they were hilariously different. But we all perceive the world through our filters, but we also are playing a constant game of how we expose ourselves to the world. It's the we've all probably seen some TV show where there's the producer on the sound stage, like at the news station, or you see someone in the back in the trailer at the golf tournament, and they're going, "Give me camera 1. Okay, I'll take camera 2. Let's go to hole 16. Let's cut to commercial. Okay, there's nothing good now. Let's put this PSA on." And there's like some historian in that room going, "Well, I can bring up this piece of information," and you bring it up and you go, "Oh, I remember the last time I was in a similar setting and did this, it didn't go well. Well, I'm not going to tell that story today." And, I'm not going to do this, or I'm not going to do that. We do all this editing in our head. So not only do we edit what comes in, we edit what we present, which means that the person who we're in dialogue with is doing it as well. And that goes to that whole concept of what authentic is. Are you, the real Michael Stone? Or are you the Michael Stone who shows up for Facebook Live? Or are you the Michael Stone who shows up in the exam room? Or am I the one who shows up when I go to the gym? Or who am I?
Yeah. And that self-reflective authenticity query is really important. And it may be we lose track of that in our business, or we lose track of that over the last year in our fear or uncertainty.
Yeah.
Unless we take time to consider really it. You think about, there's supposedly 40,000 different physiologic and inputs to our central nervous system every second, from that play into our adaptive unconscious. And how is our adaptive unconscious playing into our authenticity equation?
Yeah. Well, it goes back to that whole, it's part of what, we explore when we're at, Feathered Pipe. And, none of us, you and I know the questions, but that doesn't mean we've answered them completely for ourselves. But, we can help facilitate those discussions as to how those sorts of decisions about what is a life goal, what is the archetype by which we live, what is the journey that we undertake, how that all fits into, oh, well, is that why I'm here? And then, is this behavior that I have actually getting me anywhere?
Yeah. Those are really great self-reflective opportunities, really.
Yeah. I mean, think about it as a parent of a teenager being faced with a teenager or a young adult and being asked if it's okay for them to drink.
Yeah.
Well, we know what the legal answer is. It's against the law.
Mm-hmm.
And, in a lot of jurisdictions now, if you provide the alcohol, it's a fairly significant criminal offense if you provide the alcohol. and um, and a lot of police organizations, police departments monitor, high school Instagram stuff. They're looking. And so, facilitating your kids having a party is bad news for yourself and bad news for your child. And, and I remember this discussion when we were at Episcopal High School and I was the school doctor, and we'd have these discussions in health committee about, well, how judgmental can you be with the student who's sitting in the infirmary drunk because they brought a bottle of whiskey back from Christmas break or from Thanksgiving break, rather, I guess it was. There we are, and the administrator on call, the counselor on call, and me as the physician are all there to evaluate this young man and decide what to do with him in the emergent setting of him having drunk too much. And we've all just walked there from the faculty Christmas party, and we all had put down a beverage to walk across the campus.
Yeah.
And, it's a very, was it bad that we had a drink? And it's really whether something's functional or dysfunctional, like if he had been home at Christmas and watching a basketball game and had friends over and everyone was spending the night and the parents let everybody have a beer or two with pizza, it's illegal and it's wrong and it's criminal, but it's not necessarily dysfunctional. But drinking those, that whiskey on dorm and getting caught, it's still illegal, not ethical, not whatever. But it's also going to be dysfunctional because it plays the role in terms of whether or not the child's going to get to college.
Well, there's a lot of complexity in that story, and there's a lot of complexity. I immediately went to, wow, the biotransformation pathways in the liver of a high school student are really different, and if they drink too much, they're going to have the liver of a 40-year-old the studies of the freshman who suddenly starts drinking liver biopsies at the beginning of their freshman year, and later in their college, and their liver aged over 20 years just by regular weekend drinking and partying on frat row. I mean, we can go a lot of different places, but you bring up a very good point.
Right.
What is culture? Well, this takes us off beat a little bit, but laws are often put in place to help protect a group.
Right.
The unintended victim, or the societal victim. And so how do we throw that even through the lens of what's happening now with our CDC guidelines, our state guidelines, our city guidelines, our home guidelines, in opening things up with variable immune systems and variable treatments? These are all great wrestlings, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and, one of the things when you think about it, you can make, from a microscopic to a macroscopic level, you can think about a cell defending itself. You can think about an organ defending itself. You can think about a person defending itself. You can think about communities. And as you start thinking about communities, suddenly, the police department's your immune system, and, the police officers are your white blood cells, and you've got natural killer cell activity. And, as you said about the rules we make rules to protect. But on the flip side of it rules that protect part of us may in a dysfunctional way particularly when we draw boundaries between all of us, or distinctions, it suddenly creates maybe harm for others. And Sandra just tossed out a book entitled "Breathe" by Imani Perry, and I just glanced at Amazon, and it's "Breathe: A Letter to My Sons" by Imani Perry, and it's looks like it's a pretty remarkable book. It was a 2020 Chautauqua Prize finalist and a 2020 NAACP Image Award nominee for outstanding literary work. And it's a woman speaking to her sons about her life's experience, and that question of parenting our child in a persistently unjust world, a world of rules and those distinctions. And it's kind of, I think, the takeaway for me in all of this is listening to a lot of thoughtful voices, and also listening to the voices that just are expressing their pain as well.
No, absolutely. I think it's creating space to listen.
Yeah. Well, and I think maybe in creating that space, it's a few years ago, we may have deluded ourselves that racism was in our past as a society, that it was a relatively minor illness. And, it's clearly a hate and pain that's destroying our country on an ongoing basis. But I think, I was thinking about this a lot after the Atlanta shootings of this past weekend, that maybe we need to start getting a little post-racist, not so much saying that racism doesn't exist, but the outrage should have been that anyone would have killed 6 humans, because they weren't all Asian, but, there was a white woman who was shot, and there was, I think, at least a partially Hispanic male who was shot. And, maybe we should start trying to come around about, we should just be offended that it's human beings in general who were, who were shot. And what changes do we need to make as a society to make everybody well? And
yes, and we have to acknowledge, first is acknowledging, and then we can change. We have to acknowledge the pain. We have to acknowledge the injustice. We have to acknowledge that, and we have to do it well.
Yeah. And I think when we don't draw distinctions, it forces everybody to come to a common ground. Like, I have heard people say, this wasn't just about, Asians, and why are they making it about Asian Americans? And, this is just an example of Biden being off the rails, right? But if we just simply made this, we're all outraged that people died. And what do we have to do to make it so that no one dies? I think that there could be some unity in that. And, and that goes to, what, and I talk about this in the Dandelion Effect, and we talk about it in the materials we've written about our work at Harmony Hill and Feathered Pipe. But the concept that if we do self-exploratory work and we recognize that there's something of value within us, it's almost an obligation to recognize that there's something of value in everyone else that's worthy of respect and reverence. And we owe that respect and reverence to the other person. And we owe a commitment to care for them, every one of them.
It's absolutely true. Well, and that's a heck of a coffee break.
Yeah. Thank you all. Look for the Feathered Pipe Dandelion Effect. The podcast will be released at Saturday. Join us next Monday. If you need to be seen in Ashland, Oregon, reach out to Michael and his wife, Leslie Stone, and their whole team, his daughter, Emily, and Megan, their other nutritionist. And if you need to be seen up here, we're here for you. We want to make a difference.
Right. Take care.
Thank you.